Hello. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you've selected the link and printed out the 3 or 4 pages on goal setting, because we are going to work through those pages through this particular video. So I'd like to get started by asking the question of what is motivation? Take a moment and think about what is motivation to you. Google defines motivation as the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. One of the things I like to do when I'm trying to define a word is look at the synonyms. What other words mean something similar? And so with motivation comes up with stimulus or stimulation or reason or drive or ambition. Webster defines motivation as factors within a human being or an animal that arouse goal-oriented behavior. So what are the drivers behind motivation? What causes someone to have the general desire or willingness to do something? Tony Robbins, and I've been a big Tony Robbins fan for years, basically says that people are only motivated by one of two things, and that it would be pain or pleasure. Is this true in your experience? Of the two, pain or pleasure, which is the most powerful? Which causes the strongest reaction? Why do you think that? Why do you think pain or pleasure for you causes the strongest reaction? I'm going to contend that the most powerful motivator is having both. Having both pain and pleasure. In other words, people will do more something pleasurable and avoid something painful than they will to do just have something pleasurable or just to avoid pain. And if you can combine them both, the goal becomes way more powerful. On the pain side, it's been said that one of the most powerful human motivators are the fear of loss or the fear of humiliation or embarrassment, or maybe the fear of failure. Often the fear of failure, humiliation, or embarrassment, whatever is your biggest fear, will often stop people before they start. A long time ago, I was at a youth group, and I noticed this gorgeous girl just across the room, and I was trying to work up the courage to go over and ask her to go out with me. And I'd stand up out of my chair and start to walk over towards her, and then the fear of rejection or the fear of failure or the fear of not knowing what to say when I got over there, and I'd sit back down in my chair. And the sad thing is that I was rejecting myself. I was causing myself to fail. I didn't even give her the opportunity to reject me. It caused me to reject myself. That's a pretty sad state when we start rejecting ourselves. We don't even give ourselves an opportunity to go forward. But yet everybody does it. And then one day my buddy Bill says, "Hey, Tim, did you go check out Donna? I think I'm going to go ask her out." Well, that was enough motivation. I bolted out of my chair and ran over and started talking to her. Yeah, we've been married 43 years now. So often people will reject themselves or they will stop themselves because their fear already won. That's a pretty sad state of affairs. So how do you overcome fear? Well, there's two ways. You can either increase your desire, and you can honestly recognize what are the true long-term costs of failure. The problem with most humans is that we're so caught up in the moment that we don't stop to realize what are the true long-term benefits of realizing a goal and what are the true long-term costs of failure. So how do you increase your desire? Well, you really focus on the why. You employ the power of purpose. What is the purpose? You start getting emotional about what is the goal. If your goal was to graduate from college, what are the positive benefits of graduating from college? How is a college degree going to improve your life? How is a college degree going to change your life? What kind of people are you going to meet because you went to college? What will be your earning potential? What are the positives of this? Think about that. And then we need to create our desire to become urgent, to where it's really urgent, and it's a bigger, more pervasive goal than the other things, the silly little things that will come up that will often derail us. So how do you increase your fear of failure? If the fear of failure is a big motivator, how do you increase it? Well, you got to realize its long-term potential cost of failure. What is the long-term potential cost of not graduating from college? How is it going to affect your pay? How will it affect your spouse or your kids? How will it affect your job? How will it affect your relationships with other people? Another thing you can do to increase your fear of failure is to fabricate some additional pain. And so you're thinking, how would I fabricate additional pain? Well, what other things would cause you to have more humiliation and more embarrassment? We've kind of already addressed some of these things. Who else will be hurt if you fail? Who else will be let down or disappointed if you fail? And then the one for me is who would be secretly happy or have that smirk on their face? You know, the one you kind of just want to, never mind. But you know, the one that gets you kind of upset about it. Who would be happy that you failed? Think about that person. Now, does that motivate you? Does that make you want to not fail more? Yeah. So there's a great book, and it's What They Don't Teach You in the Harvard Business School by McCormick. But I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the book during this video. So the researchers studied the entire graduating class of the Harvard MBA program. So let's think about this for a minute. What kind of students get into Harvard? Do they accept just anybody, or is there a pretty rigorous standard to get into Harvard? Do they pretty much only accept the smartest of the smart, the most well-connected and the wealthiest? That helps, but they're really going after very smart people, the cream of the crop, if you will. And this is not just a bachelor's degree. This is going after the entire master's program, the Masters of Business Administration program. So we're not talking about the cream of the cream. We're talking about the cream of the cream of the cream, the smartest, best, most diligent people on the planet. And so they studied the entire graduating class of the Harvard in 1979 MBA program. And what do you think they found? They found that 84% of the students of the graduating class had no specific goals beyond graduating from Harvard. By the way, graduating from Harvard, pretty admirable goal. And they found that 13% had mental goals, but not written them on paper. Mental goals of what to do after they graduated from Harvard, but hadn't written them on paper. And the 3% had clear written goals and plans to accomplish them. So what do you think the conclusion would be? 10 years later, the same researchers studied the exact same graduates, and they interviewed them again. And this is what they found. They found that the 13% of the class with the mental goals on average earned twice as much as those Harvard MBA graduates that did not have their goals written on a piece of paper. Think about that, twice as much. And the 3% with written goals earned on average more than the other 79% combined. Think about that. The 3%, right here, the 3% earned more than the other 97% combined. But I know you're thinking, yeah, but how much more? 10 times more than the other 97% put together. Pretty impressive, wouldn't you think? So what I would like to do now is I'm going to drag you into the 3%. If you're not already there, the rest of this video is going to be designed to take you to the 3%. Oh, by the way, Yale, not to be outdone by Harvard, did a similar study over a 5-year period, came up with similar results. A great book by Napoleon Hill is called Think and Grow Rich. It's on my annual read list, and I highly recommend that you read it at least once in your lifetime, and ideally you'd read it several times. Anyway, there's a couple of good quotes in this book. One of them is, "Poverty needs no plan. It needs no one to aid it because it's bold and ruthless. Riches are shy and timid. They have to be attracted." He goes on to say that when riches take the place of poverty, change is usually brought about through well-conceived and carefully executed plans. So now we're going to get into what I call goal setting on steroids. So make sure that you've got the documents printed, the goal setting documents printed at hand, because we're going to be pausing the video and working through them right now. So on this first page, there's a place for 60 places for you to write down 60 different goals. So now's the time for you to start brainstorming. I would like you to list out everything you would like to be, do, or have in your lifetime. Once again, list out everything you would like to be, do, or have in your lifetime. Now, it's easy to come up with 8 or 10 or 12 things, but I want to push you. I want you to pause this video and don't turn it back on until you've got at least 30 or 40. Ideally, you'd have 60 items on this list. So go ahead and pause the video now and get to work. All right, good job. If you don't have 30 or 40, at least pause the video and work on it until you get 30 or 40. So now we're going to go to the next. What I'd like you to do next would be to take the top 10 goals. And so you're looking at your list and you're thinking, wow, how do I pick the top 10 goals? Which one do I pick? Well, let's just for the fun of it, pretend that you went to the doctor and the doctor said, oh, Mr. Kovar, I've got bad news for you. You've only got enough time left on this earth to do 10 of your goals. Pick your 10. Which ones do you want to accomplish first? That sort of helps me identify the 10 most important goals. So now that you've got your 10 most important goals, one of the things that sometimes helps is that you'll notice that some of these goals will nest together, or maybe they'll stack on top of each other. In other words, if you get to this goal, you first have to get this one done. And I love those kinds of stackable goals because they make progress seem faster. And so you might figure out which one's the biggest one and put that on your top 10 list because it's also able to get some others. But put it on your top 10 list. Don't get too hung up as to which one's first and which one's last. Just work on getting the list of 10 because it doesn't really matter at this point in time. We're just identifying some 10 goals to which we are going to dig into deeper. So pause the video. All right, so now we're ready to dig into and start doing the real work here. The real work would be on the last page. And by the way, I'd like you to print the last page, one for each of the top 10 goals. And you're going to work on these goals until they become yours, until they have been written down and are your goals. So the first goal is you're going to write down with as much emotion as you possibly can as to why this goal is important to you. How are you going to be improved? How are you going to be a better person? What are the benefits to you and to your family and to those around you if you were to realize this goal? You want to make this goal as compelling as you possibly can. You want to employ the power of purpose. You want to have this goal be bigger and more urgent than the obstacles that are going to arise, because there will be obstacles that will stand in the way of you and the goal. So take a moment now and make this, why is this goal important to you? Write it down with as much emotion, make it as compelling and desirable as you can. So pause the video and get to work. All right, welcome back. Now we're going to do the work on the pain, on the other motivation. This is the stick side, if you will. So what are the consequences if you don't reach this goal? How is it going to hurt you personally to not reach this goal? If for example, if graduating from college, having a 4-year degree was part of your goal, how is not getting that goal going to hurt you? Is it going to hurt your income? Is it going to hurt the kind of people you've met, the kind of contacts you have? How's it going to affect your spouse or your kids or your parents or your friends? Who else will be hurt or let down or terribly disappointed with you if you do not reach this goal? And then lastly, who's going to be secretly happy? You don't have that little smirk on their face that you failed. Yeah, kind of write their name off in the corner, that you just absolutely do not want them to have that little smirk. Yeah, now that you've established, so pause the video and establish the painful points here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start looking for what are the little things are going to come up to cause you to have a pause or to derail you from your goal. What obstacles are going to rear their ugly little heads that try to get in your way? Too often people are derailed because an obstacle they didn't think about popped up and they didn't plan for it, and it causes the goal to become hard or difficult, and then they got sidetracked with something else. And so let's think a little bit about what are some of the obstacles that are going to stand in your way from you realizing your goal. And write these obstacles down, because now we're creating a little step path towards accomplishing your goal. So pause the video, get to work. All right, the next to the last thing we're going to do is that we're going to give this a deadline pressure. It was once said that if it weren't for the last minute, nothing would get done. And so give this a deadline pressure. Give this a time pressure. Give yourself, for example, if you were going to, your goal was to graduate from a 4-year college and you're 2 semesters into this college, wow, okay, I've gotten how many semesters left before you're able to graduate? So pick out a goal. I'm going to graduate on June of, pick a year that works for you. And then lastly, we want to make this a real contract with yourself. Make this a contract with yourself by signing it. Sign it your legal signature. Okay, now you've got your goals written down. If you do one of these for every one of the top 10, you're going to be amazed. You are now in part of the 3%. Now, if you want to make this even better for yourself, there are a couple other little tricks that you can do to increase your likelihood of success. And that would be to take your top 10 goals and write it on a Post-it note and stick that Post-it note on your mirror. So it's the last thing you see as you brush your teeth before you go to bed, and it's the first thing you see when you brush your teeth in the morning, and then you read that note twice a day. And then another trick would be to take that a similar note and write it up and put it in your wallet next to your money, so that every time you dig into your wallet to pay for something, you're going to see that note. Take the moment to read it until you have it memorized, and it's going to help focus the unconscious mind on that which is important for you. Now, if you really want to add some overdrive to this whole goal-setting experience, you're going to do what is often called a treasure map, or sometimes called a storyboard. Go to the dollar store or someplace and get a poster board of paper. Then go onto the web and start printing off pictures or images that represent your goal. If you had an image of you graduating, you might get a picture of a cap and gown. Or you have one of your goals is to get a cabin in the mountains. You get a picture of a cabin in the mountains. And you would glue this or stick it onto this poster board. And what I usually do is I put the poster board behind my bedroom door so that only I can see it. And then twice a day I will close the door and take a moment and focus my unconscious mind on the pictures on this treasure map. And it's really kind of fun because a while back I found one of my old treasure maps crumpled up in the back of the closet, and I dug it out and I looked at it and I realized that, wow, I had realized everything on that treasure map. That was really exciting. It kind of proved to me how powerful treasure maps are. So congratulations, you've entered the realm of the 3%. I expect good things for you this semester.